Hi everyone, welcome to the Xerox Multifunctional C8045 customer training. We had training earlier live, but I was supposed to record it and I didn't end up recording it. So I'm doing another version. And with Hastings folks, I'm trying to remember all of your questions so I can address them again as I go along. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is give a device overview, look at jobs application, how to load originals, printing. We're going to look at your applications such as copy, scan to email. Then we're going to take a look at machine mount maintenance and supplies, and then control panel features and functions. Okay, so this is just kind of a physical rundown of the machine. In the middle top, we have our control panel. And then up at the top, we've got our document feeder. The document feeder is usually about a 130-page capacity, but there's ways that you can work around that if you have larger documents that we'll go into in more depth in a bit. You have your paper trays in the front of the machine. Over on the left, you have tray 5, what's also called bypass tray, that you use. That's used for any non-standard paper, so that would be for heavier paper, cardstock, labels, envelopes, things like that that you don't want to put in the regular trays. And then over on the right hand side, we have what's called the finisher. So we have an output tray, and then we also have, depending on your capability, options to do staple and hole punching over there. Okay, so the document feeder, as I said, usually the capacity is about 130 sheets of paper. Load it in, just make sure that your guides are actually right up to the paper. So sometimes when the machines are newer, the paper guides are a little stiff. You want to make sure it's right next to the paper so it gets the right size paper. And you want to place the document face up. When you load onto the document glass, you want to make sure it's on the top left-hand side. Your machine has capacity for 8.5 and 11, all the way up to 11 by 17 size that you can load in the document feeder or onto the glass. Okay, so when you're loading the paper trays, just make sure you pay attention to the max line. Try not to overfill it. That'll cause misfeeds. Just make sure you pinch the paper guides to unlock and slide guides until touching end of paper to lock. And again, once you actually load the paper and have the guides snug next to the paper and close the tray, you're going to see a little pop-up menu that asks you to confirm what you've loaded in there. Usually it gets it right, but if not, like here we see A4, we need to go back in and make sure that those guides are right next to the paper so it actually confirms an 8.5 by 11 size or whatever size you have in there. Okay, so trays 1 and 2 are what we call adjustable trays. So you can load 8.5 by 11 on up to 11 by 17 size. The types of paper you can load in there are bond paper, hole punched, letterhead, plain, transparencies, labels, etc. So that's trays 1 and 2. And again, once you load the paper, you put the tray back in, pop it back in, you're going to get that little message that pops up that asks you to confirm what you've loaded in there. Okay, so trays 3 and 4 are on the bottom of the machine, and these are your high capacity trays. So those usually hold up to around 2 reams of paper, usually around 1,000 sheets, so it holds quite a bit. And those are not adjustable, so those are dedicated to 8.5 by 11 paper. Okay, so excuse me. Now we're going to take a look at the printing properties. So there's a few different things you can do with your printing. You can do a normal print job. You can do what's called a secure print job, sample set, delay print, and you can save jobs also. So basically, when you do a secure print, what you're going to do is go into File, print properties. Secure Print allows you to create a little code. It's your own code that you create at your PC. And once you create your code and you send jobs to the printer, it's going to hold those jobs in memory, and it's not going to print them until you actually physically go to the printer and release those jobs with your code. So what you're going to do is, from your PC, the first time you access Secure Print, it's going to ask you to create a passcode. That's 4 to 10 digits, and that's the only time it's going to ask you to create that. Every time from there on out that you go into Secure Print, it will populate with that passcode. So you choose Secure Print, put in your code, press send, and you can do this with one job or multiple jobs. Once you actually send the job or jobs, you go to the printer, you select your jobs icon, and once you open that jobs icon, it looks like this, where you can choose Secure Jobs at the top right hand. Once you choose Secure Jobs, it's going to pull up all the secure jobs that are in there. It's usually listed by your network username. You select your name, it's going to ask you for a code. And at this point, it's pretty cool because you can either choose to just print one job. If you have a meeting or something and you need just that one job, you can print one. The other jobs will stay in there. Or if you want to print multiple jobs, you just say print all, and it'll print them all. Okay, and otherwise, you shouldn't really have to choose a tray. What the machine does is it knows the measurements of your original, and it should just pull from any of the trays that has that size in it. So you should be okay there, unless you have something specific. If you have special paper, maybe cardstock or labels or something like that, then you can go into paper and choose select by tray, and then you can choose which tray. That's usually tray 5, sometimes called bypass tray. Otherwise, you have other options. You can do multiple pages on one page, multiple images on one page. You can change the orientation, choose a watermark, that sort of thing. I don't believe there are any questions on printing. Okay, so cleaning the machine. Basically, you have your glass, document glass here on the left-hand side. And what happens is when you load your paper onto the glass, it takes the whole image there. So you want to keep that clean. When you load the paper into the document feeder, what it does is it goes through a little piece. There's a little strip on the top and the bottom, and that's where the machine takes the image. So when you clean the glass, make sure you get the top left-hand strip there. A lot of people miss that. And what happens is, even if there's like a little tiny smudge, it can turn into a long streak on the paper. So you just want to use the same type of material, cloth you would use for your glasses. Try not to use any kind of cleaner on there. If you can, just use light moisture. If you need to, you can use a little bit of cleaner, but just make sure you put it on the rag, not on the machine. Okay, so replacing consumables. So anything that you need to replace is called a consumable, and it usually has a peach-ish color tab on it. So with this machine, it's really, really nice. It's easy to get to. You have your device's front door. You just open the door down to the bottom. Your toner cartridges are going to be up at the top. And with these, if you have a color machine, you'll see 3 colors and 1 black. If you just have the black and white machine, it'll be just the black toner. But basically, what you do is just slip these in and out. The machine will let you know when it's empty. And so you'll go ahead and pull it out and then insert another full one in its place. The waste cartridge container, this is where all the waste is captured. All you have to do with this one is put in an empty one when the cartridge gets full. So this will also give you a message when the cartridge is almost full, so you can change that out. And then drum cartridge, you won't have to change these as often. And again, the machine will let you know. And pretty straightforward, they're down towards the bottom, and you can just push a lever and snap it out of there. Okay, so again, any of the consumables will be, they'll usually have an orange tab or an orange handle. With your misfeeds, the machine's going to show you where the misfeed is, and any of the levers or the tabs that assist you in removing the misfeed is going to be in a green color. So as you see down here, you have a green roller that you're able to roll the paper out. So just make sure that you follow the directions if it tells you to roll the paper a certain way. And just make sure that you close everything back up when you're done. The machine is pretty good about letting you know if something isn't locked back in place before it starts working again. Okay, so next we're going to go in and take a more in-depth look at the control panel. Just a quick peek here. On the top right, you have your on and off button. This is really helpful if you need to restart the machine. Since it is a computer, it might get locked up sometimes, or if connectivity is not working right, you can go ahead and select that button, and it'll let you do a restart, do a full power off. You can also work with power modes and so forth. The white LED backlight indicates if the device is on, off, in low power or sleep modes. The home button, this is always going to get you back to your main screen that shows all of your applications. And the touch screen enables you to interact with the device by using very light finger touches. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to another document to do more in-depth training on our control panel. Okay, so here we have our control panel again. You see here a reset button. Basically, the machine is designed to reset itself every 30 seconds to a minute, meaning that if someone was up there and they had their information in there for, say, a copy job, 100 copies, single-sided, whatever their settings are, the machine, after 30 seconds, it's going to give a warning message saying, do you want to continue working? And if the user says yes, it won't change the settings. If the user says no or walks away from the machine assumes that that person is done and sets it back to all the defaults. However, if you have a lot of activity going on and you know that someone was just up there and most likely it hasn't reset itself, you can go ahead and select the reset button. And that's okay to do even if there's activity going on. If things are being printed out and copies are being made, you hear that activity going on, you can still hit reset because it's only going to have an effect on this screen here. It has no effect on any of the jobs that were already sent through. So you're essentially just resetting this screen so you can go in and input your information, then it's going to put you next in queue. So the next question that I had from Hastings was, okay, so can we, or do we have the ability to view which jobs are in there if we need to know where we are in queue, etc.? Yes, so you go into this jobs icon, and what this screen does is it lets you know jobs that have already been completed, jobs that have gone through, and then also jobs that are waiting to be printed. So you see here, the first one is in bold print. That one is in the process of being printed. Anything that's not in bold has been completed, and it'll let you know the status, completed or deleted, etc. And if you want to check to get more information on that actual print job, you select that job. At this point, you could either delete it, you could check the progress, or the job details. So I'm going to select job details. And here, it just gives me some information on when it was printed, Usually it'll say the name of the user, so the network name, where the print job came from, so you could talk to that person if you need to. Required resources. In this case, this one is held because it's waiting for a certain type of paper. So it has A4, it's searching for A4 paper, and most likely in this machine, only 8.5 by 11 is loaded in there, which is fine. Basically what happens is these printers have something called workaround. So if any jobs are held because they're looking for the right type of paper or resources that's not loaded in there, what the machine should do is hold that memory and then keep sending the other jobs through. So it's a workaround, so other jobs are not held up if the right paper isn't loaded for one job. Okay, and then again, if you had sent a secure job, this is where you would go to get that one. So we went into jobs, then we select secure jobs at the top right, and then if I had sent a secure job over here, it would list all of the secure jobs, usually by network name. I would select my job, put in my code, and then either print one of the jobs or all of the jobs. Okay, so that was the jobs icon. When you go into copy, most of your settings that you're going to use are at the very top when you first launch the application. You can set them in any order, and so basically if I wanted to choose a quantity first, I could. If not, then I can go back and choose that at a later time. So in this case, if I wanted to reduce or enlarge, I could go ahead and select reduce enlarge. And there's some quick presets that I can choose from here. If I go into more, then it gives me more options. And then again, if I go into more one more time, then I've got some more options. So that is our reducing, enlarging. Paper supply is usually set to auto detect. So again, the machine is always working on measuring. That's why you confirm what size you put in the actual tray. And then what it does is, whether you're sending it from your PC or doing a copy job, it measures the original, and then if that size is anywhere in any of the trays, it'll choose it. You can choose two-sided copy. The machine's always going to collate unless you tell it not to. Original type, photo and text, that's kind of the best that captures both of those, but if you needed to, you could choose something else like a map, a newspaper, etc. You can lighten and darken, you can sharpen, so you can clean it up quite a bit if you need to. Automatic background suppression. You have this in your scanning also. Most of these settings that we're going through now, you also have in your scan to email. So automatic background suppression, what that does is if you're copying or printing on colored paper, so, or actually from something that's on colored paper. So if you have a document that's on maybe dark red paper, what it does is it suppresses that color so it's not as gray and the print shows up a little bit better. You can change the contrast, edge erase. So when you get to the bottom, these are a little more kind of bells and whistles. Edge erase is a nice one where originally it was designed to remove any hole punch or staple marks, but then they took it a little further and you can go in and you can crop up to 2 inches around any of the edges. Excuse me. So that's kind of handy if, say, you have a website address or something, some information you don't want to show on the document. It'll crop it right out of there. So you can go up to 2 inches. Okay, so edge erase, image shift. This one's kind of handy if, say, you only have the hard copy of a document and you want to go in and move the whole image over. So I go into margin shift, and I can move it up or down, to the right or down. So that's nice if, say, you have a hard copy of a document that's all the way over to the left margin, but you need to put it in a binder. You can scoot that over slightly. Okay, and book copying. So that was a question that I had from the group. Book copying, basically, once you choose that, the machine knows that it's going to take 2 images if necessary. So you can do both pages, left page only, right page only. And if you go into more, that's going to give you a better visual of how to use this setting. So if I want to do right page only, I select right page only. And now it shows me how to load the book. So it's going to be loaded on the top left hand side of the glass. And then it also shows me how it views the book. So I say right page only. It's how I'm actually seeing the book, right page. I can still put the book upside down on the glass and it recognizes which page I want it to copy. Another thing it'll do is if you have a spine, a thick spine, maybe that is like a spiral or something like that, you have another little edge erase area here that will erase that area in the middle. So just keep in mind though, it won't undistort something like if you have a book and you can't push it down all the way, it's super thick. If the machine can't see that writing, then it still will be distorted. It doesn't quite take care of that. Just try to push the book down as much as possible. But it's really nice because you can also use edge erase around any of the edges, so you can really clean it up a lot. So that's book copying. And you can do booklets. We looked at annotations. Annotations is handy if you want to put page numbers, comments, dates, or a bait stamp onto copies of a document. So if I wanted to do page numbers, I would select page numbers, turn that function on. What's nice about this one is you can tell it anywhere you want it to go on the page. So if you have a really full document, you can tell your page number to go on to the top right or go in the middle, etc. And you can change the font on these too. Sometimes they start out as a little bit small. Okay, so we'll go out of annotations. Okay, and one last thing in your copy function and your scanning function and your faxing, if you're going to use faxing on this one, what you can do is also hit reset while you're in that application, so you don't have to jump out and go to your home button and hit the reset there. So especially while you're just starting to use the machine, say you've selected a lot of settings and you want to change some things, you can't remember what you've set, or you just want to start over, hit reset, and what it's going to do is keep you in this function, in the copy function, so you don't have to go all the way back to the home. Okay, so as far as that was, we didn't have any more questions on the copying. So if we head on into our scan to email. So with the scan to email, excuse me, usually the process is folks just send it to themselves and then take care of whatever they need to do at their PC before they send it off to someone else. But you could CC folks on here if you needed to. But basically, if you wanted to accept all the defaults, you just wanted to do a really quick scan and send it to yourself. At this point, all you would have to do is click on Add Recipient, and Hastings is set up to Network Address Book. And you can either search for your name or choose your name in there. So once you have that done, you can just hit send. So if you had your name in there, this send button would be in bold and you could use that. Otherwise, if you wanted to change some of the settings, what's kind of nice is if you go into subject, you can change that subject. It's going to default back to the default, so you're not changing anything permanently. But if you click on subject, then you'll see The text is already selected, so you don't have to delete anything or backspace over it. And you would just type in whatever you want that subject to be named. What's going to happen is down here, the attachment is also going to take on whatever name you change it to. If you wanted your attachment to be different than your subject name, you click on that paperclip, and again, the text is already selected. You don't have to backspace or delete. Type whatever you want for that attachment name, and it'll take on that name. So it's kind of nice if you have maybe like the subject is a certain contract name, and then your attachments have separate names depending on the document. Those are really handy. So then also you can go into your PDF. So if you needed to change it from a PDF, basically what the default is PDF image only, but if you click on there, oh, in this case, it took me back. But basically, if you click on that one on your machine, it's going to give you some choices. You can go into, you can save it as a JPEG. You can save it as a PDF, writable. So there's different functions in there. Okay, actually, it doesn't give you the option to do a PDF writable. It's more of a searchable. And so what it does is does some programming so at least the document can be read. You can't necessarily add anything into it. So you can do two-side scanning. What's handy with this one is if you scroll down to almost the bottom, you'll see that you have the ability to remove blank pages here. So if you don't want to do it at your PC or you don't have the capabilities, what you could do is tell the machine that say you have a mixed set, single-sided, double-sided, tell the machine to recognize all of them as double-sided. Once you do that, then you can click remove blank pages, and it's going to remove any of the blanks out of there. So it's kind of a quick shortcut here. You can do two-sided scanning, original orientation, usually it's portrait. It's always going to scan in color. Original type, again, is set to photo and text, but you can go in and you can change that if you need more precision. If you're doing a map or newspaper or something like that. And you have your auto background suppression. You can change your contrast. Usually, what you should do first, if your document is a little questionable, if it's hard to read, not as clear, try your contrast first, and then maybe try lighten and darken. But contrast usually solves the problem first. You can change sharpness, color saturation. Your resolution is usually set to around 200 or 300 dpi. But if you need to, you can go ahead and change it all the way up to 600 dpi. Okay, and then original size. We talked about that a little bit, where the machine, it's always measuring the original size because it wants to know which size to look for in the paper trays. So sometimes if a document is smaller than 8.5 by 11, the machine will measure that, notice it's not any standard size, and then it'll take you to another screen where you have to choose a tray. In that case, what I suggest, if you know it's going to be an off size, maybe even a half size, I would just go ahead and go straight into my tray and choose that first. That's for copying. So you have your edge erase function here also. And if you needed to, you could change the from or reply to. Usually the process is you just send it to yourself and do whatever needs to be done at your PC, and then you have record of it. But if you needed to, you could change that. You could also change the message. So if I click on message, it allows me to go in and type a message. Okay, and Build job. So that's kind of the last thing we looked at in scanning. So build job is handy for a couple of things. The first thing is if you have a document that's larger than the feed requirements for the document feeder, what you can do is turn on build job, and essentially what you're telling the machine is do not send the job until I say submit. So you're putting everything in memory to just have one submission, one PDF. So basically you can turn on build job, put your documents into the document feeder, press scan, and then when those documents are done, you can put the next group that you need to feed through, press scan, and then once you're done with everything, submit document, and it keeps it all together as one document. Another thing it's useful for is if you have maybe a group of things, maybe you've got a large document that's stapled and you don't want to pull the staple out, you just want to be able to fold it over, put it on the glass, but then you have other documents that you want to add to that batch. So if you turn on build job, you can put the first stapled packet on the glass, press start, and then the next one might be a larger size or something that you want to put into the feeder. Go ahead and hit scan, and you can keep doing that until you're ready to submit. And also, as with the other applications, you have your reset button at the very bottom. So if you need to reset, select reset, and it'll keep you in that application. No need to go all the way back out and go home. Okay, so back to the main screen. We don't have workflow scanning installed there. Usually it's just email, scan to email. Some customers install workflow scanning if they have really large documents and they want it to go straight to a folder. There's less restrictions on the size than there are on the email. Device, when you go into device, this is going to have some basic information on the machine. You should have a phone number for support and listed on your machine the serial number of the machine and the model, etc. But if not, you can go into device and it'll say, if you go into about, it'll show you all that information. Otherwise, if you wanted to check on your supplies, say you have a big job that's coming up, you can go ahead and select supplies, and what it's going to do is give you a visual of what you have left in all of your cartridges and some of your other materials in there. Alrighty, and with this group, we weren't, actually we did ID card copy. So this is a really cool function where you can copy the front and back of something and it just puts it on one side of the paper. So an example would be if you have an emergency card, a small card that has front and back that you just want on one side, or if you have a check, you want the front and the back to be copied onto one side of the paper. It's really nice because it saves paper, etc. So basically, really straightforward to use. What I usually do is just load the document, actually put it on the glass top left-hand side, change any settings you need to change, select scan front, so it's top right-hand side, and immediately within seconds, the machine will let you know it's time to scan the back. So what you do is just flip it over, put it in the same area. You don't have to try and figure out placement. Just put it in the same area that you put the front. Select scan back. It'll tell you it's waiting to print. At this point, you could delete if you wanted to. Okay, and you should have your document. So that's a really handy function. And then also, if you do end up getting fax, fax is set up the same way the other applications are. So when you first launch the application, you'll see a choice to add recipient. So once you select that, you have the choice to either choose from a device address book or manual entry. Usually they're not set up for the mailboxes or the polling, so it's usually manual entry or device address book. So I'm going to select device address book, and if I wanted to, then I could choose that name and set it to that name. Otherwise, you can just do manual entry for just the one-off ones. You can also, so it has the same settings that it does in copy and scanning, so two-sided. You can change resolution, change your contrast. If you wanted to, you could print out a confirmation report and so forth. Okay, so that's the training, and there weren't any more questions that I can remember. I did mention that since our training is usually on-site, in-person, hands-on, in-depth, I usually pass the next portion over to support. So if customers have questions, they can go to support. In this case, since we have the coronavirus and we're not in person, the Xerox manager has extended support that I can do. So basically, you can call me at any time or email me at any time. And when you're using the machine, I can walk you through functions, or if you have questions, you can just reach out and ask the questions, and we can go from there. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation, and I hope you enjoy your new machine.